So we can use this limitless reality that is prosperity to demonstrate lack and limitation. We can do it. I've done it. I'm not proud of it, but I've done it. I've done it, okay? But the beautiful thing of it is that it doesn't change the reality that is prosperity. Prosperity is still the only reality there is. It's because it's what God is. See, we can use this limitless reality that is the truth to demonstrate lies, all kinds of lies. Lies that we're separate, lies that we're unworthy, lies that we're not enough. And even though we're imposing this limit on the truth, the beauty of it is it doesn't change the truth. That's why Emerson tells us that the truth sits in smiling repose. It's probably doing this. I sure wish somebody would use me. Yeah. Sits in smiling repose because whatever it is that we're imposing on the truth doesn't change the truth. And the moment that we realize that, it reveals itself on demand. On demand. We can use this reality that is wholeness and health to demonstrate disease, horrible, horrific diseases. I heard somebody talking about a flesh-eating disease the other day. I said, "Oh my God, what are we doing with our imagination?" You know, the Bible said God created man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. So it's like we're standing back saying, what can I do with this? But the interesting thing is that even though we impose those limits on our wholeness and health, doesn't change wholeness and health. And the minute that we remember that, the minute that we believe that wholeness and health has to be omnipresent, has to be omniscient, has to be omnipotent, it's got to be right where we are in this very moment, it reveals itself on demand. On demand. Because this power doesn't hold back. We hold back, but this power doesn't hold back. So what is this demand that I'm talking about this morning? Dr. Holmes says, to make a demand upon the universe merely means to request, claim, or to accept some good which heretofore we have not been experiencing. But when we speak of making a demand upon the universe, we do not mean coercion, willpower, or even mental concentration. We mean the recognition and the acceptance of some definite and specific good. He also tells us, and you hear me say this all the time, and the reason I say it all the time is because I have to use it in my own life all the time. He tells us that supply and demand are one, and that supply always precedes the demand for it. And what does that mean? That means before you even had a problem, the answer had to exist. Before you even had an answer, a question, the answer had to exist. Had to be here first. Because the supply always precedes the demand. So what would that mean about an incurable disease? The answer would have to exist before the disease could even show up, wouldn't it? What if we shifted into that awareness and made the demand for the answer? Supply and demand are one. The supply always precedes the demand. So he's saying that the supply for anything had to exist before the demand was ever made. How does that relate to prosperity? How does that relate to joy? So why this is so important for us to understand, and the reason that it's so important to understand is because we get so hung up in trying to make things. We get so hung up in trying to create things. We get so hung up in trying to find things. Go back to what Dr. Holmes said on page 41 of the textbook. We look too far away for our reality. It's already here, it's already ours, it already belongs to us. On page 635 of the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes tells us that we learn that the supply of every good awaits our demand. Somewhere there is already provided a lavish abundance for every want, a supply equal to any claim that can be made upon it. But the demand, he says, here we go, but the demand, he says, must be made. And then he explains to us with 3 simple words how we make the demand. He says, as you believe. That's the demand. As you believe. So your belief is the demand that you're making on the universe. You know, something that really ties in really well with this lesson is a talk that I heard back in October. Dr. Michael Beckwith gave a wonderful talk on visioning. And I want to share some of the things that he talked about because it really aligns with what we're talking about in terms of this first 4 units of the textbook. He's talking about the 4 stages of spiritual growth and unfoldment. And the first stage he talks about is where most of us begin, and that's the victim stage. That victim stage where we feel like in some kind of way external forces are running our lives. External forces have the power to do something to us, that there's something outside of ourselves that has the power to do something to us, where life is doing us rather than we're doing life. And he said that there comes a point, though, where we become aware that this isn't true. That this has never been the truth of us. And that's when we begin to move to that second stage of consciousness, where we begin to recognize that there are principles and laws at work, principles and laws that are governing our lives. But he says that this level of consciousness, this is the cause and effect level of consciousness. This is the stage that he calls the manifester stage. And he says that we begin to recognize that things happen in our lives because they're invited to happen in some way. So we're no longer seeing life as doing us anymore. We're no longer seeing those external forces as having power over us. We're no longer seeing dis-ease as creating itself. We're no longer seeing our problems as just showing up. We recognize there has to be something behind them. There has to be something supporting them. There has to be something driving them. Okay, so that's the level where we begin to work with the law. But when we begin to work with the law, the thing that we learn about the law is, and these are his words, he says, we realize that the law doesn't know what we want. It only knows what we're interested in. And that's what it demonstrates to us. It demonstrates to us what it is that we are interested in. Where our attention is all the time is what we're interested in. So if our attention is on lack and limitation all the time, guess what? If our attention is on loneliness or being depressed all the time, guess what? So, but we begin to recognize there's something that I can do here. I can use this law to direct it in terms of what I do want. I can shift my attention from what I don't want to what I do want. So that's stage 2. But he says stage 2 is also that you know, he calls it the manifestor level. And he said that's where we're using visualization in our life to make it so, to make it happen in our lives. When he said make it so, I had that vision of Jean-Luc Picard sitting on the bridge of the Enterprise. Make it so. Yeah. Okay. But anyway, he says, then we move to stage 3. Stage 3 is where we move from making it so to making it welcome. See, I heard that. I heard the shift in the room at that moment where you begin to see the difference in what we're doing. Making it from making it so to making it happen. And he calls this the quantum reality, which is what we studied last year in first year class, where he said, this is where the mystics begin to live from, where we surrender to an awareness, to a presence within us, where we recognize that there's nothing that really needs to happen because everything has already happened. Health has already happened. Joy has already happened. Peace has already happened. Am I aligning myself with its nature, as Ernest Holmes said in the very beginning? Do I see that as what I am? Am I allowing it in my life? Am I making it welcome in my life? And he says that this is the level, the stage of consciousness where we shift from visualization to vision, which is what Reverend Jane is teaching us. Where we shift in that space where we're from so much of directing and telling the law what to do to asking empowering questions